Okay. Good evening. It is now 6 p.m. and welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting. I am the Chair, Louis Washington. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the city's website. I thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to need a little bit of help with this since I'm not there, and I do apologize. There were some things going on with the company, and I was out today, and I just knew I wasn't going to be able to be down there on time, so I was going to have to join remotely. So thank you for your flexibility, everyone. I do see Councilmember Watton there. I do hear Councilmember Johnson. I think I saw Madam Mayor, City Attorney Dina's there. I think I see the city administrator, Mr. Chambliss, and city clerk Dina Dean. Is that correct?
And Robert Thrall.
And Robert Thrall, and we have Director Davis.
Yep.
Am I missing anyone else for attendance?
No, it looks like you've got everybody.
Okay, not bad being remote. So, so thank you very much. So we now move to our first item of regular business, and that's to approve the minutes dated October 20th. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Point of order. Agenda approval is what you meant.
I'm sorry, did I say minutes? I'm already jumping ahead. Thank you. Councilmember Juan, sorry, to approve the agenda. I'm sorry. Let's start with the agenda. Any questions on the agenda? Can we go ahead and approve it?
No objection.
Okay, if there are no objections, we'll move forward. Next order of business is public comment. I'm not there again, so is there anyone there for public comment? I don't think there's anyone.
There's nobody in the audience, Chair Washington.
Okay, sounds good. Now we can move to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes dated October 20th. Questions regarding the... Okay, if there are no objections, then we'll go ahead and approve the minutes for our last meeting dated October 20th. Okay. So the next agenda item is going to be our critical areas, and I'm going to turn that over to Director Davis to move us forward with this item.
Hey, thank you, Chair Washington. So tonight we have Jeff Gray with OTAC here as our consultant that's been working with the city on the critical areas ordinance. And Jeff is going to share his screen and give a brief presentation that was included in your packet materials. So welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us tonight online. And if you just want to go ahead and start doing a screen share and giving a brief overview of the critical areas ordinance changes and revisions since the committee last saw it. I know we had a discussion item at the last committee meeting, but tonight we are looking to move this forward to council at the next council meeting. So welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks. And can everybody hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Zoom, Teams, everything's a little different. So sometimes the computer switches back and forth. I will go ahead and share my screen. Just to introduce myself, I've been working as a consultant for the city in critical areas reviews since 2015. OTAC has worked for the city, gosh, since 2004, since the Snoqualmie Ridge project. I'm the managing senior scientist of our sciences and permitting group here at OTAC, and I'm a professional wetland scientist, I guess, in terms of certification. So go ahead and share my screen now. All right. Oh, there it is. All right. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can everybody see that?
No.
No, we don't see.
No.
That did not
screen.
work. Let's try this again. Oh, share. Okay, button. There it is.
Looks like it's coming through. There it is.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So Director Davis asked me to prepare a presentation to sort of summarize some of the critical areas updates we've been doing since 2024 till now. Just remind you of what's in the packet. There's a summary of changes kind of from where we left off the end of 2024 till now. There's also a crosswalk of the code changes that are proposed. There's also I think this presentation is in the packet, and there's also the code and red lines. Let's strike out. So that is all at your disposal. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update kind of the best available science, kind of currently where we are and what's going on, and kind of the regulatory framework from the State and Growth Management Act and from state agencies, and then how that is going to be reflected in the city code. So I can get this to work. There it is. Okay. So just what I said, the crosswalk, the city updates, and then at the end, I'm gonna address some of the city projects and how the code updates might impact those. That was asked at the last meeting about a year ago, so I'm prepared to answer that. And feel free to ask any questions along the way or wait till the end. Either way, I'm okay. Okay, so big picture, the biggest focus on this round of critical areas updates under the Growth Management Act are on 9 or 10-year cycles. The newest push this round are called riparian management zones, otherwise known as stream buffers. So what DFW did in between the review years is they compiled synthesis of the science. They reviewed all the academic papers. That's in volume 1. And then in volume 2, they came up with management recommendations about how to manage riparian management zones from a public agency standpoint, such as the city of Snoqualmie. So the concept is rather than call them stream buffers, refer to them as riparian management zones, because that sort of has a bigger, broader perspective rather than just kind of a buffer, stay out kind of approach to managing these areas. These areas provide 5 main ecological functions: stream morphology, think of like fish habitat, wood, stream temperature, pollutant removal, and nutrient dynamics. And so the picture at the lower right just shows how much a river or stream moves over time, and that can be scaled up and down based on the size of the stream, obviously. And then the cross section on the left kind of shows the relationship between the stream, the riparian zone, and they call it zone of influence. So what DFW did is they compiled all the science, and then they provided updated recommended buffer widths for public agencies. So what and I've tried to explain this a few times, so this is going to be my newest attempt. But it's basically what's the distance from the stream that captures all 5 of those functions. And so they base it on, they call it a FEMAT curve. It's done by the Forest Service, and it looks at the relationship between riparian ecosystems, functions, processes, and the distance from the stream channel. So the curve on the left shows that the distance from the stream, is shading, because that's the maybe the furthest distance for a tree. So imagine the climax tree in Washington, say it's 200 feet or so. And so that's the sort of the relationship is when you provide a full tree height, you get all 5 functions. So that's what the chart on the left is showing. DFW also recommends a minimum 100-foot just for water quality protections. Think of like vegetated areas filtering out pollutants so they don't run into the stream and then carried downstream. So how is this reflected in the code? We just changed the definition of stream buffers to riparian management zones. That's covering those main functions. I won't read that. Spare you guys. The stream buffers, we're not proposing any changes to the type S, that's the shoreline streams. Those are regulated under the Shoreline Management Act, and that wasn't the goal of this effort under the Growth Management Act. Class 2 streams, type F, proposing buffers increase from 75 to 200 feet. And for class 3 and 4 streams, which are non-fish habitat streams, increasing buffers from 25 or 50 feet to the DFW recommended minimum 100 feet. So knowing that the city of Snoqualmie is largely built out, there's a lot of areas where wider buffers can't be implemented. So so to sort of highlight that and provide clarity in the code, we added an exemption that functionally isolated riparian manager zones are not regulated. So a functionally isolated is, say, a buffer that's separated by an intervening road or a structure or a house or something like that. So trying to provide a little common sense to the implementation of the science. We also added a provision for single family residences. After doing this for 20 years across several states, probably the most frequent area of conflict is somebody putting a deck on their backyard, not knowing that they're in a buffer and having neighbors calling each other because they found out the year before they couldn't put a deck on. So knowing that, we included just a 250 square foot kind of allowance for single family residences that were part of a previously approved development, such as decks, patios, and appurtenances. This is just a summary. The existing code is on the left side, and this is just showing that the stream buffers go from 75 to 200, and then 50 to 125 to 100. There's no other changes to the stream buffer widths. That's for the type S streams. To show what this would look like, this is the stream mapping based on DNR's hydrography, their kind of data set. It's not perfect. You can look at the mill site kind of towards the top of the figure and you know that that's not right. So it's not perfect, but it's an available data set, maybe 80 or 90% accurate. So the purple streams are the type S streams. The dark blue streams are the type F that will have the increased buffers from 75 to 200. And the light blue streams are non-fish habitat that will have buffers increased to 100. And then I wanted to show, because I think the question here is how is this going to affect the question that we received is how does this affect the city? And so we tried to put metrics on it. We tried to look at acreages. We tried to different GIS kind of exercises and mapping exercises, but it really wasn't, it wasn't, we weren't getting good data without actually going out and field verifying all the streams and buffer widths and stream typing and at the expense of the city. So one way to think about it is where can these buffers be implemented? That's sort of how we asked that question. So here are the streams and here are the wetlands, the wetland layers that's mapped. So you can see that these areas are already largely encumbered. And then in addition, here is the floodplain mapping. So, almost half the city is already encumbered by some development restriction just based on the amount of aquatic resources that we love, but also the restrictions that come along with them. I also wanted to point out that where they can be implemented, like in this upper, the north kind of edge of the city, these are already in open space. Where it also can be implemented is in the urban growth area that's not developed. So that's kind of a theme. Also, counties are implementing larger buffers because they're easier to implement. Cities have been having a lot of heartburn on how to implement this because it's really hard to expand buffers when most of the city's built out with infrastructure. All right, so that's stream buffers or riparian management zones. We also looked at floodplains and flood hazard regulations. So in 2024, the code updates, we proposed increasing the finished floor elevation above the 100-year floodplain from 1 foot, increase it by 2 feet to 3 feet, 2 or 3 feet. So the context from the regulatory world is that Department of Ecology is encouraging local governments to go beyond the FEMA minimum requirements of the 100-year floodplain. The reason for that is 40% of the National Flood Insurance Program claims between 2017 and 2019 were for properties outside of FEMA map flood zones. So there's the mapped flooding is sort of starting to get disconnected from the environment a little bit. And then the increased protections are encouraged because the maps are increasingly unreliable. We kind of seen that in the news, I think. So the question that around this time last year that I received was, how does this affect Snoqualmie specifically, right? So, so university, oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself here, but I will just finish that thought. University of Washington has a climate projection tool that I'll go over the results for Snoqualmie after this slide. So conceptually, this was the freeboard I was mentioning. This is the base flood elevation. That's another technical term for the 100-year flood elevation. The city's flood code requires finished floor elevations for habitable places to be 1 foot above that. So that's just to protect public safety. Other cities, King County has it as 3 feet for critical facilities, hospitals, fires, things like that. Actually, no, that's across the whole county. I apologize. And then 2 feet, I think, North Bend. So there's other jurisdictions and cities that are taking a sort of a safer approach, if you will. Okay, so what does the UW's mapping climate projection tool show? So, comparing data from 1980 to 2009 to what the projection is, there's going to be a 2.7 increase in total annual precipitation. And I'll kind of get to the importance of that. But as of now, just big picture, there hasn't been really much statistically significant increases in flooding events. So that's kind of the main point. But the data shows that on the chart on the left, annual precipitation is slowly ticking up. The magnitude of the 2-year storm, think about that's the intensity and the duration. So hence flood events, whether it's local or whether it's like on the main stem Snoqualmie, are also ticking up. And so that's just what the projections show. And this tool it has a lot of different bells and whistles with it. You can play with different carbon emissions, but that's for a whole nother day. Okay, so what's been happening locally within the city, right? So King County completed a Snoqualmie River hydraulic study to look at the evaluation of the effects of the Snoqualmie projects on the downstream flooding within the city. The Army Corps did a 205 project where that's in, let's see, the yellow that you can see where they actually widened part of the stream around the same time, I think, is when the former railroad trestle was removed. And so those projects allow more flood conveyance. And then a PSC did their project where they lowered the Weir Crest. So, and King County modeled a predicted 1.4 foot reduction in the 100-year base flood elevation within the city. So that was 2015. 2018, King County did another study, the Snoqualmie River Hydrologic Study, evaluation of flooding trends and current conditions. Again, same thing as what the climate projection tools were showing, increased storm frequency and potentially increased magnitude. However, they're not yet statistically significant. So everything's kind of trending with the climate model projections, but there's nothing that's statistically significant. If you've ever taken a stats class in school, that kind of important that is in terms of a data set. At the same time, they also say as the data grows, the data might show itself a little better, but we're not there yet. So, so the other thing too is that the King County modeled the 1.4 foot reduction, but it hasn't been approved by FEMA, and the FEMA maps have not been updated. So essentially there's sort of a built, so if the 1.4 foot reduction is true, then there's almost like a safety factor built into the city's code already based on the floodplain regulations. So our approach is to wait until King County does submit the letter of map revision to FEMA. It's estimated 2026, 2027. I don't know how long it's going to take FEMA to review and approve it. but it's upcoming. And so the plan is to revisit the flood hazard regulations once the FEMA maps are updated. So that's so we are not proposing any changes to the flood hazard regulations currently. Okay, so I just want to remind you of the crosswalk, if anybody has any questions about specifics. And then how do the code updates impact the upcoming city projects? There's no impacts to downtown. That is within the shoreline management plan jurisdiction because there are no changes to the type S streams such as the Snoqualmie River. Snoqualmie Valley Hospital is already vested and it's in construction. The Snoqualmie Dog Park is already encumbered because where it's located, it's a good use of a park that can get flooded. The Model Train Museum is also within shoreline management plan jurisdiction, so there's no impacts to that project. The Gateway lot for additional, that's along 202 there, is also not impacted because it's in shoreline management jurisdiction. And then the mill site phase 1, the EIS just wrapped up, and so there's no impacts to the phase 1 of that project. There are potentially minor impacts to phase 2 and 3, but again, that's kind of a topic for another day, just because it's kind of dependent on DFW stream typing that I couldn't find was confirmed in the EIS. So that's the high level, and I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you, Jeff. Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Watton?
So the one thing I'm most concerned about, and that's existing development agreements that we have if we look at the critical areas and modify those rules. And I believe City Attorney Burke has perhaps insight into that.
Oh, I did have, I'm sorry, I closed the RCW, but generally with a development agreement, the developer's vested, that the development agreement kind of lays out the rules for the development. So at this time, I'm not anticipating a lot of impact like to the mill site development agreement. I don't know.
We did look at that and there weren't really any significant impacts to the mill site.
Okay. And that development agreement, if I recall, is passed in 22 and it has a 20-year timeline.
Isn't
on it.
that long? I thought it was 10 years, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember
Um,
Johnston?
And then similar with regard to the roundhouse, I saw on that slide about the model train museum. Maybe it was on there and I just missed it, but yeah.
Yes, it was on there and it would,
Okay.
it would, be in the shoreline environment.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be affected by the buffer increases. Chair Washington, we see you have your hand up.
Thank you. So I know that it's for another discussion, but kind of in tandem with Councilmember Wadden's point, how would it, because I saw in there that it would impact sites 2 and 3. Now, again, that depends on what the development's going to look like, but you were kind of starting to speak to that a little bit, Mr. Gray. How could that potentially impact sites 2 and 3 for the mill site?
It was a conservative estimate because there's a site plan for phase 1 and the EIS, and phase 2 and 3 are just planning areas. So I could make that kind of statement with planning area 1 that's currently laid out between the parking lots and development footprint. Sites 2 and 3 are not, but there's so many wetlands in that area. And there's like you said, and I'm not sure if the development agreement covers 2 and 3, things like that. So there's a lot of questions there, but just looking at in terms of where the water resources are, increased buffer widths, and then having that functionally isolated kind of clause in there kind of limits the impact. So there's a major stream that goes along through there, but it actually flows on the north side of the road. So
Mhm.
it's those little things like that. So
Okay.
I didn't want to say no. That's a lot harder to prove absolutes, I guess.
Mm. Thank you.
One thing that I would like to address this evening is if you look on page 97 of your packet, the Planning Commission's made a recommendation to increase the allowed improvement area from 250 square feet to 500 square feet. And so we'll need to update the agenda bill to reflect what the council committee would like to propose going forward to council.
Yeah, Chair.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I think that last time we had seemed to have some consensus around sticking with the 250 because it seemed as though the intent of this was to follow the so-called best available science, which landed us in conversations with our consultant and with Fish and Wildlife at sort of a compromise of 250. So again, while I appreciate the intent of the Planning Commission, I think it'd be best to not run afoul of Fish and Wildlife. And, so I'd recommend that we propose 250 coming out of committee.
Councilmember Johnson, I'm just curious, what was kind of the logic of the increase for the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so what they were considering was that it's possible that some of these buffers would go through existing properties, specifically on the ridge. And some folks who own those properties may have bought them assuming that they could build a larger patio at any point when they wanted to. And now they're potentially going to be limited if after someone comes out and takes a look at the stream if they want to make that development and decides that, yeah, you're actually within this buffer. So they're going to be under the 250 limit. So that was kind of their thoughts on that process. They had a really long conversation about it and the potential impacts and weighing the pros and cons. Yeah.
I think it
Okay.
would be fair to point out too that a 250 square feet is an exemption. So the homeowner would not need to go out and get a full-blown critical area study to go up to 250
Right.
square feet. But it doesn't preclude them from being able to propose something more than that. They would just have to provide a critical area study and do the appropriate mitigation for that project.
Mhm. And again, specifically, we're talking about the class 2. I think it's the F. Is it sorry, let me look at that again. I'm toggling between type F. So this would be the fish habitat that we're recommending the 200 feet, correct?
That went up to the 200.
Yes.
Okay. So class 2, type F streams. Okay.
Councilmember Watton?
So my question is this, because I think of 500 feet initially, and it's like a 2-car garage. But if we're talking about a patio that might wrap around a house and it's only maybe 10 feet wide, 20 feet long. I mean, I'm trying to understand what, the ramifications that us going from 250 to 500, is there something that I need to have a better understanding as far as critical areas and what requires having that study? Because I could envision something that wraps around and it's just simply a patio. It's not a built out 500 foot, I don't know, ballroom, for lack of another description. But the point being is, are we really talking about a deck that might wrap around? I just want to make sure that we don't box ourselves in or cause, unnecessary expense for the homeowner that is just simply trying to improve their property without getting into wetlands and critical areas and all that.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be any kind of improvement to the property that would be in that wetland buffer. So anything that generates new impervious surface or a building would need to have some element of review if it was over 200 and, I mean, sometimes even under 250 square feet. if they wanted to add on to their deck, would require a building permit. It just would not require the critical areas study if it stayed within that threshold. So it's not to say that people can't still improve their property. It's just we worked with Fish and Wildlife to come up with an exemption to give them up to 250 square feet so that it allowed the homeowners who bought their lot without without there being a buffer through their backyard, it gave them a little more flexibility for their property rights. Councilmember Johnson?
And then if I remember correctly, and maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but I think that if you imagine like a hypothetical scenario where someone's trying to build out their deck a little bit further, and there'd be like one corner of it that would then dip into the buffer, then it would be the section that's in the buffer that would
Yes.
have the limit. It wouldn't be the whole thing now. Now that it touched it, now you can't do anything over 250. So like a wraparound porch is potentially less likely to encroach that direction since it's going around a corner or something, at least as an average.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was mostly just to give extra flexibility for people that didn't otherwise buy their home with a buffer through their yard that may now have a buffer under the new critical areas. Councilmember Johnson?
And in fact, I think I'd like to add, if I remember correctly, what the plan was before a number of months ago when this first went through planning commission, the understanding was it had to be nothing. And that working with Fish and Wildlife, we were able to kind of bargain our way up to the 250. So this is perhaps better than what it would have been if staff and the planning commission hadn't gone back and looked at this again to try to find some wiggle room.
Yes, Councilmember Watton?
I think I'm good with the 250.
Mr. Gray, this is Lewis Washington on the council. Can't ask you to look at a crystal ball, but just kind of, we're guardrails folks here and just kind of looking at this. Do you see this changing in the near future? Like the 250, maybe because of science and global warming, maybe moving to 350?
Oh, gosh, no, I,
Okay.
I don't, because of the implementation challenges from the public policy standpoint. And, there isn't science to back that up currently. So, I mean, me as a biologist, I love plants and animals, right? And so I go with 1,000-foot buffers. But, from a science standpoint, that's what DFW did, is backing all that up. And this is what the science says. Until that changes. So it has changed, I say, since 2005, and I do a lot of wetland buffers, and wetland buffers can go up to 300 feet, and that's based on wildlife movement. So I never say no, but for the science that DFW provided to justify these code changes, I don't see that changing.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, yeah, to the committee, I'm good with the 250.
Councilmember Johnson has his hand up.
Yeah, so then I think the thing to do then is to go ahead and move this on to council. We do need 2 readings since it's an ordinance. So sooner rather than later would probably be a good time.
So I think, Director Davis, that is the plan, to have this at the next council meeting for the initial reading, and then the second council meeting of November for the second and final reading, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, and then I believe this needs to be adopted by the end of the year per RCW. So that would give us 3 council meetings potentially with the first part of December, if something came up on council where we needed it to cook for an extra week.
Okay, so I'll amend the agenda bill to reflect the 250 square foot addition, and we'll bring it forward next Monday.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Director.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, go back to the agenda here. Okay, well, are there any other questions? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So, there being no further business to come before this committee, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned at 6:35 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.